Good morning. Today I am using Vibe Voice on my own voice because there is too much noise outside and the missus is recording her own Zoom. Today I will be diving into Wanimate. There are two workflows for you to download. First is the new one. It's pretty good, but has some caveats. And the second is the old 2025 workflow, which I won't be using, but you might find useful, so I share it. That uses SAM 2 and Points Editor and just older stuff from last year. As always, join my Patreon for deeper dive stuff and to stay informed. Let's get on. So while making this video, I ran into a bunch of issues that I had to firefight. And rather than clean it all up and show you the final solution, I thought I'd leave them in, but fast forward through the rough bits instead. Why? Well, because I think we are all in the same boat trying to figure how to get on with this complex stuff. And so when mistakes or things happen, it is worth seeing how others handle it. That way we get insights ourselves and learn to self-manage our way out of a bind. That's the theory. So this is Wanimate and the new workflow I have adapted. It's going to look a bit different to the layout you'll be seeing here because I had to address some things before saving it out, but it's all the same under the hood, mostly. I am using the FP8 85N2 model, but you could use GGUFs. I am also using the standard Relight LoRa for blending the character into the video and the standard 480 Light X LoRa for speeding it all out. There is also the torch node and block swap, and those settings I recommend for low VRAM as a start point. I am running on a 3060 GPU, 12 GB, with 32 gig system RAM on Windows 10. Fantasy Portrait came loaded with this workflow, which I borrowed but have adapted considerably. I tried Fantasy Portrait, but it didn't work out as well as the Onyx Pose face control net, which you also see there. Ironically though, Fantasy Portrait done wrong actually stopped the mouth moving, so I left it in because I realised it is a good way to stop mouth movement if I need it. You never know. The other thing of note here is the FP32 VAA, which I normally swap out for the BF16. But it's only 500 megabytes, so I downloaded it and use that now. Haven't seen a difference, but some say there is. And I literally just spotted that I left the FP32 BAA set to BF16 like a dumbass. So I'll change that and resave the workflow before you download it. Next up is the inbound video. You probably recognize the man and the scene. Thing to note here is you need to set it to 16 frames per second. If you don't, the lip sync will be off, as you might also later see when things go horribly wrong. One mistake I made here was forgetting to set the width and height, which savaged my GPU until I realized my mistake. 480p, which is what 832 by 480 resolution is about as good as we get in a timely fashion on low VRAM. Something to consider. And why I am doing taboo a bunch of these with Wanimate using movie scenes is that when it comes to movies, you need to realize a few things. Firstly, movies in the cinema are still only 24 frames per second. Look up why. But that is good news for us low VRAM chaps. Secondly, quality is this as important as good story, a subject I will come back to as we progress this year. So the first big caveat is in red on the screen, and you'll find it in the workflow. It is telling you that SAM 3, which is Facebook's excellent masking tool, has a big problem. SAM 3 has a bad memory leak issue. This means if you don't disable it when you run the full workflow, this thing will redline your GPU. I'll show you what that looks like and how to recognize it in a minute. If you have a big card, you might not realize. If you have low VRAM, you surely will, because it will grind to a halt. The solution is simple. Run SAM3 first, save out the mask to a video, then disable and bypass all the SAM3 nodes and load up the mask video separately. And what you were looking at on screen is the way I split the SAM3 out away from the mask loading point. And when you load up the workflow, you will see I have added SAM3 into its own group 1 and everything else after it into group 2. This is the OniX pose and face detection. And like I said already, it works better than Fantasy Portrait, or has done so far, free. You can see some routing options there, but for face, the top option. For the middle option, it will grab body pose if you set it. And the third routing point is for Fantasy Portrait, which I have pulled off screen and is in its own bypass group. The section below the pose and face detection is the reference image. Just how I'm using a photo of myself on holiday in Koh Samui, well spotted. The bypass section on the left is a color match node that I've used to good effect to match with the video on the way in. Some do this on the way out, but I prefer to trust the Relight LoRa where I in, since it is designed for it. Also, you can see I am removing the background. The original guy's workflow didn't do that. I do, just because it makes some sense to me to do that. Next is the text encoder, and it is the cached version. I spoke about this last year in the video on memory tricks. I set this to use the CPU and also set it to cache to a file. What this does is lets you set a prompt once and then it loads and caches it, saving you a few minutes the next time you run it until you next change the prompt. Use the CPU because the GPU is best reserved for models. As Kiki advised on this, he said at the time, it was the only text encode node that genuinely offloaded out of RAM. Another thing to mention here is the prompt says about me being in a suit and tie. If you noticed in the mask when I run it, SAM3 masked the entire body. I had used the points to target only the head. Rather than faff about trying to fix it, I thought I would prompt the suit back in. It didn't work, thus proving that the reference image will override the prompt, as you will see shortly. Also to the left of the screen is the Quan AI LLM, which a lot of people are now using. I don't, not inside a workflow. For low VRAM, it makes no sense to use them. It's bloat. Use ChatGPT or something for improving prompts. Personally, I prefer simple prompts or using images to define what I need. Not much to say about the main process of Wanimate, other than I set the frame window size to 81. In the old workflow that was 77, I don't recall why, but there was a good reason at the time. What this means is, with longer clips, it will split at 81 and run the second set. This way, you can Wanimate longer clips. Don't go mad. I try to keep it around 5 to 10 seconds tops. Again, I don't see much need for long video clips. If you look at movies today, you find the average is about 3 seconds. Sure, you need some long shots, but mostly not. Again, stuff I would dive into as we work on content further this year. Let's talk about some of the issues you might run into. This is the processor manager called Proc EXP 6.4 Microsoft for monitoring your memory. What this shows on the left of the top pink bar is the GPU blap, as I refer to it. If that is redlining, then I often restart Comfy UI. Not always, like when loading models or switching between processes, it often redlines. But if it sits there for long, you have a problem. The orange lower bar is the VRAM, and that I try to keep around 10 gigabytes since I have a 12 gig 3060 card. I also check the memory tab. Your stages of memory use start with VRAM, then comes system RAM, and after that, the static swap file. Mine is on the SSD drive. I have the system swap that I leave alone, but I also have a 32 gigabyte SSD drive swap. That buffers all issues and stops random ooms. In the right window is the run here I just finished, but in the example, I'd made a mistake and left the input video at 25 frames per second, which is why it ran for 241 frames. 25 frames per second is a lot more frames than 16 frames per second. I'll show you the other problem it caused.
If you say no, Elwood and I will come here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week.
Correct, the lip sync is out. That was because I left the original inbound video at 25 frames per second, set everything to 16 frames per second in Wanimate. You can interpolate later, but I'll discuss that in another workflow. Here is the original, and I will follow it with the final result.
If you say no, Elwood and I will come here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week. If you say no, Elwood and I will come here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week.
There is a lot we could say and a lot we could critique, but for me, it's as good as it gets. I am happy. The relighting is good, even if it has added a down spotlight. What you also notice is it continues on past the point the audio stopped. That is due to the frame window set to 81. It pads whatever is missing to get to the end of the next 81 frames. That is normal. In Infinite Talk workflows, it does the same, and you can figure out ways to mask it or just use it as a transition fade. Of course, I need to now test this in other settings and without dark sunglasses, but it's a good start point, and by using it with existing movies, his is actually teaching me a lot about lighting, and I'll be talking about that more as the year progresses.